Hello everyone, welcome to today's lecture. So in this channel, we will start to introduce materials of financial math. So this is our first video about the time value of money. So money is materials we use every day, right? But generally we don't understand the important definition and the meaning of this. So in this lecture, we will try to introduce more details about money. So first, let's look at this question. This is what the answer this question is: does a dollar today have same value with a dollar next year? So for example, if there is a game and you win like $1, so this is a question is I will give you this dollar today, or maybe after 1 year I will give you the same $1 next year. What will you choose? Okay, so to answer this question, I think most of the people will say, okay, I prefer to receive this dollar and this prize today. And why we have this? The reason is actually we know a dollar today actually is worth more than a dollar a year from now. So this is why we prefer to receive a dollar and the price today compared with receive it at a later time. And then maybe you will think this is already we know in our intuition, but we didn't understand why this happened. So then let me explain why we have this conclusion: a dollar today is worth more than a dollar received at a later time. So the first reason the money we receive today actually is worth more than the money we received at a later time. Because when we receive this money, right, we actually can save this to our bank account. And we all know the bank account will give us, for the deposition, they will give us the interest. So although this interest rate is kind of really low in the our general life, but this is still some money. And of course, if this is not $1, if this is a huge amount of money, for example $1 million, although the interest rate is pretty low, but this is still make we earn some profit, we earn some money for free at a later time when we deposit the money in the bank. So based on this, we know we prefer to receive the dollar today. And this is also give us this conclusion: the dollar today is worth more than a dollar at a later time. And then the second reason is the value of money actually is subject to the inflation effects. So what this means? This means like for today, maybe $1 I can buy some product, for example, a notebook. Because we know the price of the notebook, the product generally will increasing right by the pass of the time. For the most of the healthy financial market and countries, the price of the product generally will increase as a kind of stable inflation rate, so which will give us the price of the product will increasing as the pass of time. So this means if we treat like we use exactly same amount of the money to buy the product, if we do this today, we can buy more products than we do it like 1 year later. So that's why, because of the inflation effect, the money today is also have the value is also more than a dollar we receive like in a future time. Okay, so that's why we have this conclusion for the dollar today. Actually, they will give us a higher wealth in a dollar we receive in the future time. So this is kind of use some language to explain the money at the different time point will have different value, although the number is exactly same, is exactly $1. However, besides of this explanation, of course, we want to use some quantified way to measurement the time value of the money. So this is our interest. Okay, So the today's topic is you can call this as the time value of the money, but you can also call this as the introduction of interest. So first, let's introduce what is the definition of interest. So the definition of the interest is actually interest is defined as a rent paid by the borrower of this money to the lender for a specific period of time. So based on this, we can know here we have several important ones. The first is interest actually is a rent. So that means it's also some money we should, or you can call this as a cost. And this is a cost which will pay from the borrower of the money to the lender. So this is this is a money transition between the borrower to the lender. And then for this interest, we always talk about interest when we give a specific period of time. So you can see, okay, I received this interest is for 1 year, or maybe this interest is maybe 10 days. So we can always need a period of time when we discuss the interest. So now you can know, okay, when we deposit the money in the bank, we can earn some interest, right? So why the bank will give us the money, or say they will give us this interest? Because bank is not just say, oh, they will save our money, or they will just put the money in their account and never touch it. No. So what bank will do when we deposit this money into the bank will have a huge amount of money, right? So what they will do, they will use this money to do the mortgage or do the loan. So they will lending this money to some other maybe companies or maybe some people for specific reason to use money. So they will use our money or say our deposition in the bank to do some other transactions. So because bank will use our money, right? So that's why they will give us this interest. So this is a cost they paid us for use of our interest in use of our deposition in our account. So this is the definition of the interest. And then for the interest, of course, an interesting question is what the value of the interest. So for the value of the interest, or say the cost of this the rent of this borrower paid to the lender, in general, this should be a positive value. So this is when we have a healthy economics, the value should, or say the cost should be a positive value. So when we pay the rent to borrow some money from the citizen or the people depositor, they should pay some fee for this, right? However, when there is some special case, when the economic situation is not that good, when they want to try to boost the economic, so what they will do is they will decreasing the cost of borrowing money from the depositors. So in this one, they will need a negative value of the interest. So this is a really special case. So in our later lectures, we maybe will give you more information why we decreasing the interest will help to boost our economic. But here I will just give you some examples. So for example, we know during the Japan financial crisis, the Japan's bank actually give them a negative interest during that period. And also generally in some financial crisis like 2008 financial crisis, they also many countries decreasing their interest to a number really close to zero. Some even give a number about the negative value. Okay. So then here I said, okay, we talk about the interest. And then when we actually really use the value in the real world, generally compare with use the interest, we always use interest rate. So interest rate is a more common value we will use no matter when we try to deposit the money in the bank, or we try to borrow some loan or borrowing some mortgage from the bank. They will use interest rate compare with give us just how much interest we need to pay. So then let's we first give the definition of the interest rate. So to introduce our interest rate, the first thing we need to do is we need to explain several important terminology here. The first one is a principal. So what is a principal? So generally the principal is denoted by P, and this actually is initial amount of money in invest or loans. So that means, for example, if at the initial time we want to deposit the money into the account, for example, $10, then 10 is our principal. And compared with this, of course, this is one time, which is at the end of the investment. So this we call this as the final balance. So this is denoted by A, because we can also call this as accumulated amount of money by the end of the period. So of course, if this is investment, like or the deposition, that means the period at the end of the deposition period, or if this is investment, then this means at the end of the investment period. And also you can call this as a maturity time, so which is also same, it means the end of this period. So based on this, we know the difference between these two values, the initial amount of money, the principal, and the final balance, the accumulated amount of money at the end of the period. This difference is our amount of the interest. So if we use a mathematical equation to denote this, this means we just have the interest denoted by I. So we will have I equal A minus P. So of course, if we have positive interest, which means the bank will pay, or say the borrower will pay a positive cost of rent to the lender for the use of this money for a specific period of time, then our I should equal a positive value. Or in other words, our final balance should have larger value than our principal. However, if this is a special condition, which means, okay, the borrower actually don't pay, or kind of pay a negative value, or don't pay any cost or rent for the using this money for a period of time to the lender, then our I maybe will equal 0 or equal a negative value. Or in other words, our final balance won't have a larger value than our principal. So this is a really special case. So now we have this kind of mathematical equation to explain what is our interest. And before we start to give the definition of the interest rate, we can also, based on this equation, we will have actually we can rewrite this one to get the equation of A is equal our value I plus P. So in other words, if now we know the interest and we know the principal, then we can use this relationship A equal I plus P to compute our final balance, or say the accumulated value or amount of money. Okay, so now based on what we have, we can give the definition of our interest rate. So this actually is a way to express our interest as a percentage number of our principal. So that's why we generally use R, or sometimes use smaller letter I to show this interest rate, or you can call this as effective rate of interest. This is use our interest I divided by our principal. Or if you know the accumulated value, or say accumulated amount of the money at the end of the period, then the numerator can be rewrite as A minus P, our accumulated amount minus our principal. So of course, this is the definition of our effective rate of interest, or you call this as interest rate. So now let's use one example to explain how we can compute this interest rate. So let's look at this example. So assume we have a person, David, which invests $100 in his bank account, or you can say just deposit this money in the bank account. Then 6 months later, the amount in his bank account is $104.2. What is the in interest and also the effective rate of interest in those 6 months for David? So here we can find, actually we have several important information here. So first one is we have value of the money. The first one is what the $100, and this is how much money David invests. And then we have a time, which is 6 months later, and the last number of the money we have is $104 with 20 cents. So now we have this information. Then we know the question asks us to compute what the interest and what is the effect rate of interest. There's two terminology. So here we know, in our information, we know if we want to compute the interest actually is defined as the difference between our initial amount in our account, or you say the principal, with the value at the maturity time or the end of the period in the bank account, which is the accumulated amount, or say the final balance. So here we know initially David have $100 in the account. So that means here we have $100 is the principal of this question. And then what is a maturity value, or say the final balance for all the accumulated value in the account is $100 and $100 and 4 with 20 cents. So this is our final balance denoted by A. And then how long of this period? This is 6 months. And the question asks exactly same time period. So that means now we will have our P equal $100, A final balance equal $104.20. So now if we want to try to compute what is our interest, this is just use our formula. Formula is we have I is equal to the difference between our final balance with the principal. So in this question, this is $104.2 minus $100. So we know the difference is $4.2. Okay, so this is our interest. Okay, and then the second question is ask what is the second part, what is effective rate of interest. So to compute the effective rate of interest, what we should do is we will use R to denote this effective rate, and we know this actually is the the ratio between the I with our principal. So we will use the I divided by our P. So here in this one, we will get I divided by P is equal our $4.2 divided by our principal. So here principal is $100, right? So that's why we will have the equation look like this. So then of course you can use your calculator to compute this, or maybe you can just compute this by yourself. But just remember, for our interest rate, we should use a percentage number to show it, right? So here, of course, if we use a calculator, the value will equal 0.042. However, in this case, we should use a percentage number. So that means for our final answer of the interest rate, we should use 4.2%. This is a better description for our answer. Okay, so let's see what we learn in this lecture. We learn what is interest, and interest actually is a way to describe the time value of the money. Because of we have the we can earn interest from the bank if we deposit money there, and also because of the inflation, the money today actually will have a higher wealth than a money we receive at a later time. So to describe this is use interest, and a more general way we to describe the interest is we use this interest rate, which is a percentage number, to describe the interest by divided by the principal. So okay, so that's what I want to introduce in this lecture. So in our next lecture, I will continue to give you more information of the interest rate and explain more type of the interest rate. So please, if you like this one, please like this video, and please subscribe my channel for get more information.